The Cincinnati Reds' latest loss kind of feels like a curtain call.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am glad that you're alongside me today. I have loved the Reds since birth. Seriously, I got the baby pictures to prove it, and I've been hosting this podcast now. This is my 6th season hosting it. It's a little bit solo, a little bit co-hosting with Steve. Steve's not with me today. Got a little bit of a schedule mix-up. He'll be back on tomorrow's show. But you're with me. I've been doing this 6 seasons, like I said. And I am also the Locked On MLB channel manager. Locked On Reds is for everyone. We try to be positive, although, let's be honest, the Reds don't ever really make that very easy. We really want to talk about the big thing going on in Reds country each and every day with you. Going to go into some geeky stats in some cases, and we're going to overreact to the MLB season as it goes along. But I'm really glad that you're with me here today because we got a lot to get to. Because I got some bad news for you if you think that David Bell's getting fired. And that's not just me saying it. Like, there's Nick Krall said some things. And yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in today's show. Also, there's still no news on Hunter Greene's second opinion. But should Tommy John be the word, really think that this changes the plan, or at least accelerates it for some of the Reds' key pitching prospects. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but we will start today's episode by looking at just a horrid loss and why I kind of think it's it for the Reds' playoff hopes. That's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. All right, where I want to start today, Reds get smashed by the Toronto Blue Jays, and quite frankly, their playoff hopes, I think, have been smashed with it. Everydayers will know that I absolutely love to take the positive road when there's a positive road to take. But when you get beat 10-3, when Luke Maile is on the mound in the 7th inning, the positives are few and far between. Yes, Ellie hit a triple. Yes, the Reds did score 3 runs, but too little too late. There was so much about this game that it kind of feels like everything is being crushed for the Reds, because I really feel like the Cincinnati Reds saw their October hopes crushed by the Toronto Blue Jays on Tuesday. They fell 6.5 back of the final wild card spot. The Atlanta Braves won yesterday. They beat the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 6.5 games back of the Braves. The Reds are 4 games back of the Mets, who are the first team out. A little bit of cross terminology there with college basketball, first team out of the tournament, or first 4 out, or whatever. The Mets are the first team that is out of luck as far as October goes, and the Reds are 4 games behind them. And this 10-3 loss that the Reds suffered, Carson Spires just absolutely blowing up. 5 home runs allowed. The Blue Jays hit 5 home runs off of Carson Spires in this game. It felt like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we out of here of this playoff race. So frustrating to see, but this blowout loss, another blowout loss in the last 4 days, really. The Reds have seen so many of that. 5 days, sorry, can't count. 5 days. They've seen so many blowout losses now that it's killed the whole run differential storyline thing, right? We were talking about, there's a lot of folks that are like, well, they got a positive run differential. That might point to something. That's going away now. Kind of feels like the run differential thing, it's all well and good, but eventually a team that is geared to winning wins, regardless of their run differential. Well, the run differential has shrunk to 26, plus 26, positive 26 run differential. That means that their Pythagorean win-loss, what stems from the run differential, their Pythagorean win-loss would still leave them a game and a half out of the final wildcard spot from the Braves. Even if you took theirs and you took the Braves, did all that math and stuff like that, the Braves still make the playoffs and the Reds don't. So there is no make-believe land now where the Reds make the playoffs. If everything had fallen according to the run differential, they're still out of it. And the most frustrating thing for me, and it's not the fact that they lost 10-3 on Tuesday, although that feels like that's just kind of a nail in the coffin of this. But they've been playing .500 baseball for a while now. 5-5 in their last 10. 10-10 in their last 20. And if you go back 30 games, the Reds are 14-16. The Reds knew that going into the trade deadline, they needed to go on a run. And quite frankly, that's what they were telling us. Like, feel like we got the guys. We're going to go on a run. It's coming soon. Going on a run. What's that run look like now? Let's just say this. Let's say the Reds go crazy and they win 10 in a row. From this day, for the next 10 games, they win all of them. Even if they did that, the Braves would need to go 3-7 for the Reds to overtake them. And the Mets would need to play .500 ball in the next 10 for the Reds to overtake both of them. I feel like now we've run into the point that even squinting, even saying, boy, if the Reds do the really pie-in-the-sky, pigs fly type thing, even then, they still need so much help that it's really hard to see them making the playoffs. So yes, I love to be as positive as I possibly can about this Cincinnati Reds team, but I'm not going to be delusionally positive. I'm not going to be that guy. And as much as I wanted to believe that the series sweep of the Cardinals meant that there might be something in the works, even after that sweep, I told you, I said the Reds need to go 10-3 over the next 13 games. Well, they've already lost 4 games during this stretch. Maybe you do this whole deal where you get swept by the Royals and then you win 10 in a row. And hey, there you go. There's your 10-3. Nope, they're not going to do that. And we've been doing this all year. After May was horrible. June's got a nice schedule. Didn't really go on a run there. Okay, but July, you got a lot of division opponents. Didn't do anything with that. Okay, August, get somebody at the trade deadline. Didn't do that. And they're going to do something here. Stop. Let's just stop. And as much as it pains me to say, I think that for me, and I think that Steve's kind of been here for a little bit too, but I think that we're going to start kind of looking back on this season. We're going to see where everything went wrong. We're going to talk about that. We're going to see the positives of this year that we can take to 2025, but we're going to start looking at what 2025 should look like. And that's kind of what I want to do with the rest of today's show, at least for a little bit, a couple of different specific items for 2025, because it kind of feels like 2024 is out, man. Like it just, they're not mathematically eliminated. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know where you glean positivity or any feeling like I think it's curtains for the Reds' playoff hopes. I really do. So that's 1 year that has been wasted of having Elly De La Cruz. That's 1 year down the drain. And with Hunter Greene's possible future being very uncertain, the Reds have a clear path forward with their 2 top pitching prospects. Tell you what that is coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. There's so much to see at eBay Motors for your car, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen today and every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor and to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there. Shout out to everybody who has made us part of your season. I'm very happy that you've joined us along the way. We are going to continue to be with you every single day, every step of the way the rest of the year as we break down what the Reds are doing to get ready for the playoffs in 2025. Because quite frankly, when you talk about the Reds every single day and when you're just in to the Reds as much as I am, yes, there is a point where, all right, better luck next year, and we're going to tell you why. And that's what we do here on Locked On Reds. So make sure you follow along with us every single day as we look at the important things that the Reds are doing for next season. And look, the Reds aren't doing this. The Reds aren't packing it in. They're hoping that they're going to win 10 in a row. They want to win 20 in a row. They want to win 30 in a row. That's what players do. They want to win. It's just what we have been seeing over this entire season. Don't know that they could do that, and that kind of feels like what they have to do if they are going to make the playoffs. And look, if they do, I'll eat some crow. But with that being in mind, coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, Steve will be back with me, and we're going to kind of look back. We're going to start our look back and be like, what happened? And how can they not do that again, right? How could we get over that? We'll talk about that on tomorrow's podcast. But right now, I want to focus in on Hunter Greene's injury again because he got a second opinion. No updates on that as of this recording. I'm recording this in the wee small hours of the morning on Wednesday morning. And so there's been no update on what the second opinion said for him. So should Tommy John be the determination, the timetable for Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder needs to speed up when it comes to getting them to the big leagues. And hear me out on this. There's two reasons why. The first one is this front office has shown a lack of ability to sign that top flight player, whether, do they need a power bat? They got Jeimer Candelario. Sure. He's having a solid season as far as power hitting goes. Just don't look at anything else. But if the Reds we said they needed a top flight starting pitcher last offseason, they signed Frankie Montas. He's coming off of shoulder surgery. They signed Nick Martinez, who was a relief pitcher. They do these things. They don't go get the proven guy. They go get the unproven guy and hope that it works out. So with that in mind, that's one of the reasons you got to speed up the timeline of Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder. The other reason is the development doesn't stop once you hit the majors. In fact, some argue it barely begins before the player makes it to the majors. So let's kind of unpack these two. Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder are going to be looked at as far as the front office's lack of ability to sign a top flight starting pitcher. Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder are looked at as the reason that they're not going to do that. I'm telling you right now, we're going to enter the offseason. And I'm really hoping that the best case scenario reporting that we've heard so far about Hunter Greene's injury is true. But if he gets Tommy John, do not expect that to mean that the Reds are going to go out this offseason and sign Blake Snell or sign some guy who is at the top of everybody's free agent starting pitcher list. It's just not going to happen. They may sign a veteran starter. They may just bring back Nick Martinez and call it a day. But the reasoning behind whatever it is that they do this offseason is going to be because they have Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder. Okay, employ them as such. In fact, it kind of makes it a little bit easy that Rhett Lowder just got called up to Louisville. He made his way to AAA. He's been absolutely dominating over the last couple of weeks in AA, Chattanooga. It was time. But he's in Louisville now. He'll finish the season there. And quite frankly, I don't know that you need to see a ton of him in Louisville to really, I don't know that there's an X amount of games he has to pitch at Louisville before he can be considered to be called up. He'll finish the year there and really hone in, the pitches and things like that. But he's going to be a part of the rotation battle next spring training. That's going to be pretty fun, by the way. Hopefully Hunter Greene is healthy and we're talking about him as a lock. But we don't know what we're going to get out of Nick Lodolo. We don't know what we're going to get out of Andrew Abbott and all these other guys. It's going to be a fun thing to watch in spring training. Rhett Lowder should be a part of that. But so should Chase Burns. Chase Burns was labeled as a fast riser by pretty much everybody. Even Keith Law. And Keith Law is notoriously conservative in his prospect rankings, especially when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds. But he sees Chase Burns being in the majors very quickly. He even said the words in his post-draft article, he could see him in the rotation next year, 2025. So both these guys definitely are in the position to do this. And based on the fact that the front office isn't going to go out and sign a big-time starting pitcher, just mark it down right now. It's not going to happen because of these two guys. But in years past, the Reds have used it as an excuse, but not done anything about it. They got to do something about it. They got to call up Chase Burns and Rhett Lowder pretty quickly on next season, if not at the start. And the other part of this, and this was an article that I read, and I recently reread it because I found it so fascinating that there were a couple of staff writers at The Athletic that put together this really great piece about how player development in Major League Baseball is shifting. Most teams, not just the Reds, most teams really believe that there is a sizable gap between AAA and the majors. So that when you get to AAA and you start to do some things, it's not as if, number one, it's going to translate, but it's also not as if what you do at AAA really has that big of an effect on what you do in the majors. We've seen it with some guys. I mean, Carson Spires, his last start notwithstanding, is a perfect example. He was not a prospect. In most rankings, he was in the teens to the 20s. Sure, that means that he was on the top 30 list, but come on. That's not a guy that you're going, oh my gosh, I can't wait until he gets called up. But he came up and he was effective. But there's a lot of people that believe that not only has the gap really affected how players develop in the minor leagues, they almost aren't even sure that they can count what a player has done in the minor leagues as going too far toward being completely developed as a player. Because once you get to the big leagues, you learn so many different things that you can't learn in the minors. I mean, we even heard it from Hunter, and we heard it from a couple of different guys this year, even Spencer Steer, pitching, hitting, all the stuff. But guys talk about the fact that when they get to the majors, they learn how to recover. They learn how to succeed. They learn how to fail. Things you cannot learn in the minors. There's really no reason for me that the Reds should slow play Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns next year. And if the worst news should be had, if we should get an update, if we get an update before you even check this out, and maybe it's first thing in the morning, but if we get an update that Hunter Greene needs Tommy John surgery, the Reds absolutely need to take that news and fast track Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns next season. Do you want David Bell to be fired? If you do, I've got some bad news for you coming up next. The best way to enhance your Reds watching experience the rest of the way is with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. As the season grinds to a halt for the Reds in the playoff race, there's still plenty of performances to check out each and every day. Elly De La Cruz is still trying to get to that high water mark on the steals. Maybe he can get 30 home runs on top of however many steals, 80, 90, 1,000 steals he might get. Prize Picks is the place to take advantage of all of that, because all you have to do is you pick your favorite player, you pick your favorite stat, and you pick more or less. And they've got so many different stats. It's not just your typical stuff. They do the hits, runs, and RBIs. They do fantasy score and things like that. So many different ways to click more or click less over at Prize Picks. And like we always tell you, in some cases, an entry with as little as 4 correct picks can win you up to 100 times your money. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB for a $100 match on your first deposit. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you can take the Reds' hometown broadcast with you everywhere you go. Also, make sure you bookmark CincinnatiRedsTalk.com for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. In fact, a little bit of what we're about to talk about was prompted by this, because we had an article over there written by Greg Kuffner talking about the quotes and the things that Nick Krall had to say about David Bell. He was, he's been asked multiple times by reporters here in Cincinnati, what has this season done for your evaluation of the manager spot? What does David Bell's future look like, and all this other stuff. And he had a couple of things to say about this. And it leads me to believe that David Bell has the most job security in professional sports. In fact, I tweeted that out, and our friend Ethan Smith over at Locked On Pirates, who does a fantastic job covering the Pirates, let's be honest, the Pirates and the Reds are just Spider-Man memes of each other. But he said Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And for those of you that know football and things like that, you could see where he would get that, because Mike Tomlin, it feels like the Steelers haven't been all that great for a few years now, but they will never move on from him. The thing about it is, though, Mike Tomlin has a Super Bowl. Mike Tomlin has been there. He's done that. David Bell hasn't. If you talk to Nick Krall, it almost sound like he has. Nick Krall said a couple of different quotes. We'll give you this here. Direct quote from Nick Krall. He said, "He's done a solid job up to this point, and we can always get more out of everybody, but at the same time, I think he's done a solid job." Another quote, direct from Nick Krall. He said, "We came in with higher expectations, and we've had some injuries, no question. We all have to figure out how to keep moving forward and keep getting better." Again, deflecting off of David Bell. And one last quote to talk about here, and this one gets me a little bit. Overall, I think he's been. Pause. We've had young players grow and continue to get better. Look what Elly has done from last year to this year. We've had some young pitchers take steps forward in Hunter Greene and Nick Lodolo. This was in response to being asked about David Bell. So by Nick Krall bringing up Elly De La Cruz, Hunter Greene, and Nick Lodolo, he ascribes credit to David Bell for that. And to which I would, especially when it comes to Hunter Greene and Elly De La Cruz, I don't know that you can count Nick Lodolo on this. Nick Lodolo's had some nice stretches this year, but he's also been really rough here recently. And there's definitely some question marks that I have about Nick Lodolo after some starts here. So I don't know that he should be included in this, but Nick Krall decided to. But when it comes to Hunter Greene and Elly De La Cruz and giving David Bell credit for their development, that would be like giving the mayor of Metropolis credit for something that Superman did. Ellie and Hunter are just otherworldly talents. They're absolutely unbelievable at baseball. We knew this. We looked and we're like, oh gosh, these guys, their ceiling is crazy high. Now, sure, David Bell provided a very welcoming atmosphere and a great clubhouse attitude, very easy landing spot for his players to feel comfortable in. But is he the only manager that can do that? And is that where we're stopping with this? I don't know. I feel like at best, in best case scenario, most positive I can possibly be about David Bell right now is that the jury is still out for him, for me. And that's as positive as I can be. You could convince me that he's not the man for the job. And he's been here long enough that the jury should not be out on him. And I get it. He's presided over a very annoying era of Reds baseball where the Reds spent money, albeit maybe haphazardly, but they spent money to build a roster that could compete. And then COVID happened, and then they blame that on COVID for their downfalls, and so they decided to tear down the roster. So David Bell had to preside over a teardown after presiding over a roster that was built, and now he has seen the come up of that roster. I think that there's a lot of different teams that really kind of approach the managerial post as, okay, we got a guy who's a developer. We got a guy who can take young guys and make them better. But then once that team gets really good and they get to the playoff stage, like, is he the right guy for the job? We'll give him a chance, and if it doesn't work out, we'll go get in the kind of guy that does that. The motivator, the guy that gets you that extra couple of games to get you to the postseason. Is David Bell both of those guys? Because I don't think so. And I get it. We constantly hear, and Steve and I have been a proponent of these reports that we constantly hear from guys who are inside the locker room of every single player says they love playing for David Bell. They would absolutely play for David Bell. If you set him up as far as against other managers, I play for David Bell. Really like David Bell. But we never really hear a whole lot about, man, he really did this for my game. He really, man, he said this and everything clicked. I don't really hear that. I just hear, yeah, he's a great guy to be around. He's a great manager to play for. I know he's got my back. And that's all well and good, but we need that guy that can get us to the next level, and I don't know that it's David Bell. But based on all these quotes, as much as I might have trepidations about David Bell, as much as you might have trepidations about David Bell, Nick Krall doesn't. And he's the guy that has the say at the end of the day. And they just gave David Bell a contract extension this past offseason. That's the biggest factor in all of this because the Reds, really the Bengals too, so Cincinnati professional sports franchises do not pay managers or coaches to not manage or coach. And even the article in the Inquirer that also had these quotes in it, and I got most of these quotes from that. I got one quote from our article over at CincinnatiRedstock.com and Greg Kuffner. But Gordon Wittenmeyer in the Inquirer literally wrote out, and you never see a beat writer be so plain as to what he wrote, but he plainly wrote out, the Reds are not, like, barring something unforeseen and dramatically tragic, the Reds are not going to move on from David Bell. In fact, most of the management staff will stay the same for next year. That's what he wrote. He went on the record and wrote that in his article. I can't see there being anything different. And based on what Nick Krall has said, David Bell ain't going anywhere. Take that what you will. But hey, the Reds got a shot to win a ball game today. That's where we'll end today's podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast and making us your first listen every single day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB because you can get ready for the Fall Classic with Sully who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description of today's episode, so you don't have to do any searching or anything like that. Locked On MLB and Locked On Reds are, as always, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day, because you trust, you can trust that me and that Steve, he'll be back with me tomorrow, will be Locked On Reds every single day.